Hey everybody, this is Meyer, and in this video what I'm going to do is talk about the most important thing you need to produce music, which is the DAW or digital audio workstation. In theory, you could produce entire songs with just a digital audio workstation without any of the other things on this list, although of course the other things on this list will definitely help you in that process. So let's first talk about what a digital audio workstation is, why it's integral to the production process, and then we'll give you some recommendations about picking a digital audio workstation, as well as which one we recommend you use while you're taking this course. Let's get started. The digital audio workstation has a number of unique features, but in general, the best way to sum it up is it's the main hub of producing music and where you're going to be spending all of your time. It allows you to both record instruments inside your computer, so it does recording. It allows you to do mixing, so it replaces these huge and expensive mixing consoles of the past, and it also allows you to sequence and arrange note information or MIDI. So those are the three main features that your digital audio workstation does. In addition to this, your digital audio workstation will allow you advanced audio editing capabilities, such as going into the waveform and adding effects. It'll allow you to do equalization, do mixing and mastering, and pretty much produce your track from start to finish. So when you're picking a DAW, which is perhaps the most important decision you're going to make as a music producer, here are a few things to consider. The first is perhaps the limiting factor, which is the price. Some of these digital audio workstations can be over $500, some can be over $2,000, and some you actually have to pay monthly for. They have like subscription-based formats too. So finding a digital audio workstation that works with your price range, which there are even free ones out there, is obviously really important just for your budget. The next thing you want to think about is editing capabilities. Is it stronger in editing audio or editing MIDI? And this is where demoing the software or also just looking at what people have to say online can really help about what are the struggles people are having with them? What's kind of the learning curve to editing audio versus MIDI? Good example is Pro Tools. Pro Tools is a fantastic piece of software and is industry standard at many studios around the world for recording and editing audio. But when it comes to editing MIDI or actual sequencing, its features aren't quite as advanced as other digital audio workstations, in my opinion, and it's why you don't see quite as many people sequencing only in Pro Tools. The other thing that's important to consider is if you have a certain computer, the compatibility with your operating system in plugins can actually limit what your choices of a digital audio workstation are. If you're a PC user and you really want to get Logic, either you're going to have to buy a Mac or you're going to have to choose a different digital audio workstation. If you're using a digital audio workstation that doesn't support a plugin format that you'd really like to have, so I'm going to pick on Pro Tools again. Pro Tools has their own AAX extension, which is the plugins that can be used within Pro Tools, and they probably have a good reason for choosing it, but if you have VST plugins that you'd like to use in that format, you cannot load them into Pro Tools. So keep that in mind as you're deciding what digital audio workstation you want to have. What's kind of the capability for expansion? The next thing to consider too is what are the community and tutorials like? Some digital audio workstations are specifically designed for people who are used to producing in a studio environment and who maybe aren't necessarily new to producing music like many of the people taking this course are. Whereas some digital audio workstations, others on the other hand, like FL Studio, have a great online community and YouTube community full of tutorials and generally covering all the bases of what you'd ever want to learn so that you can get started making music and following along with these really quickly. And kind of the most important thing that when you're considering a digital audio workstation is what's the workflow like? Does it work with your brain or not? FL Studio is a very different sort of non-linear atmosphere that a lot of people like, but also a lot of people hate. So the best thing to do is try a lot of different ones out. Most of them have free demos that you can try, and a lot of them you can try the demo and you're not even time limited. You can just keep using it. Maybe with certain features like opening saved projects, you may not be able to do that until you buy the software, but they allow you to keep demoing it and keep going back and forth. And there are a lot of producers who start on one application, they'll switch, then they'll switch. Maybe they'll switch back to one of their other ones. They realize that their switch wasn't a good call. So people are always changing, and these digital audio workstations are always adding new features. So keep in mind what features are important to you. What are you looking for? And of course, the best thing to do is try making music. Try making music on a couple different ones and use that to inform your decision rather than what I or anyone else has to say. And of course, kind of with that, the learning curve. Is it easy to learn, hard to master? Does it require a lot of knowledge of the sort of technical aspects of music, but once you master that, it'll be easier to get started? Can you add your own keyboard shortcuts if that's important to you? Kind of the learning curve and workflow both go hand in hand, but something else to kind of consider too. Is it are you going to be having to spend a lot of time fighting the software to get the music you want from your brain to your computer out? And if so, is there another application that's a better fit for you is the best thing. I would even go so far as to say is there aren't really some that are better than others because people make great music in all of them. It really just comes down to what digital audio workstations are stronger for different areas and what works best for you and the way that you think about music. Because different digital audio workstations can actually change the way that you think about producing music, which is both awesome and kind of scary. Here are a few things not to consider when you're picking a digital audio workstation. The first is how cool it looks. Now, obviously the user interface is really important and can make or break your own experience using a digital audio workstation. But if you're trying to look cool in the studio producing with Ableton Live versus FL Studio or Logic or something like that, you're not using that decision based on how well it can help make your music. It's based on your image, so that's not really that helpful. The other thing, and I cannot emphasize this enough, the quality of the included instruments within these digital audio workstations is not a reason to pick a digital audio workstation. People can get swayed, and even when I got started producing, like years and years and years ago, it'd be like, oh man, I love these, but Logic comes with all these loops and all these instruments. And then you find out, as you've been producing for 8, 10, 12 years, that most of the time you're going to graduate to external instruments anyway. The only digital audio workstation where people generally tend to use in-the-box stuff tends to be Reason, and it has really good included instruments that rival some of the best VSTs. And that's not to say that digital audio workstations don't include great sounding instruments or even effects. A lot of people use the built-in effects, myself included. It just means picking a digital audio workstation because of the content that's included as opposed to the workflow isn't, in my opinion, the smartest call, because down the line, once again, you're going to be curating your own collection of instruments anyways. The other thing that you don't want to consider is what the sound quality is. Now, granted, the sound quality can be very objective, and if you find yourself making better sounding tracks in one digital audio workstation than another, then by all means, go ahead and use that digital audio workstation. What I mean by this is there are these wars online of whether FL Studio sounds better than Studio One versus Cubase. And let me tell you, all these digital audio workstations pretty much sound exactly the same. What it all comes down to is how you're processing, how the interface of the digital audio workstation causes you to think about music, which then informs your decisions when you're mixing. People can make tracks in all of these digital audio workstations that both mix really well, mix poorly, and to the point that you probably couldn't tell the difference between most music produced in one versus another if it's really well produced. I mean, granted, some people can pick out, you can hear, oh, this track was made in Logic because I recognize this drum sample or this sound from the FL Studio pack, but most people, and I don't think anyone can be like, you know what, this person EQ'd this track from the parametric EQ included within FL Studio, or this track was mastered in Studio One because of the way that it was exported. All of these are running in 32-bit floating point audio internally, and they're rendering these audio files down when you're sending them to mastering in 16 or 24-bit WAV file, which is lossless. So the internal sound quality is pretty much not an issue. I've never seen a serious digital audio workstation out there where one just sounds better than another. So in my opinion, that's all just noise you should just ignore. The last thing is don't listen to what people tell you is professional or not professional online. They don't know what they're talking about. And that also means me. If I tell you to use one digital audio workstation or another, you can take my advice about what I like, but that's only what works for me. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work best for you. This idea of, oh, I got to use what other people are thinking is professional because they're going to take me seriously. Those aren't the people you want to take you seriously anyway. You want to just focus on making great music, and it doesn't matter if you're making it in Mixcraft, Logic, Pro Tools, or anything like that. Great music is made in all these digital audio workstations, and that's what you should be focusing on doing, not trying to learn or force yourself to learn different digital audio workstations because you think that'll make more people listen to your music. Because let me tell you, most of your listeners out there don't care what digital audio workstation you're using, and really they shouldn't. Now, if you're struggling to decide between a digital audio workstation, we've actually made this choice easy for you. Of course, if you're coming into this course with experience with another digital audio workstation, or there's a particular one you want to learn because either you own it, you're able to get good pricing on it, or something like that, feel free to use whatever digital audio workstation you want to. However, in this course, if you're starting out and you want to just get started with a good professional digital audio workstation, we recommend you use Studio One for this course. And the main reason for that is we're going to be using it for this course. And let's talk about why. First of all, Studio One is cross-platform, which means it's available for both Windows and Mac. So whether you're a Windows or Mac user, you can use Studio One. The next thing is it's really full-featured. It's a great all-around digital audio workstation that's great for recording and sequencing MIDI, but it's also really easy to use. It kind of has this drag and drop one-page mentality where things are pretty logical versus hidden in all these menus, because with digital audio workstations, I should say, the ones that have been around for 30 years or more, a lot of times they get what's called bloat. A lot of the professional users are requesting more and more advanced features because they've already mastered the basics, which is of course great to the professionals who have been using the software for 30 years. But for somebody new, now it really increases the learning curve because you're trying to dive into all these menus just to find basic functions, because there's so many features and it just can be overwhelming and almost paralyzing. So Studio One does a good job of having a lot of the features you would need, but keeping the stuff that you would want to do, especially when you're getting started, right there, right in front of you. There's also a free version, which is really important to us, that you guys can get started making music without having to necessarily spend any money. And of course, most importantly, the lovely folks at PreSonus provided us site licensing for those of you who are taking this course in person, which means those of you who are taking this course not online are actually going to get a copy of Studio One for the duration of the semester to use and install on your computer. From there, a lot of people choose to either buy Studio One or a different digital audio workstation when they finish the course and they decide, okay, I want to be more serious about producing music. Of course, everything that we're trying to teach you, and this kind of goes back to the philosophy of this course, is going to be easily transferable to any digital audio workstation. And of course, if you have any questions or troubles with that, a great place to go is the comments, or perhaps even better, the Discord. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and go ahead and share tips and tricks for your favorite digital audio workstations, or why you chose what you chose in the Discord, so you can get a good, healthy discussion about that. And hopefully maybe we'll even make pages for each of the digital audio workstations. So if you have particular questions about one or another, you can get help for that there in the Discord. See you in the next video.